So why even do this podcast? I do get asked this a little bit, like why do Modern Psalmist? First and foremost, I want to help worship leaders, singers, and musicians grow in understanding and specifically in confidence in spontaneous prophetic worship through just conversations. I mean, I say interviews, but really I'm talking about just having conversations, people that are my friends, people that will be my friends, and also there'll be time to time that I'll post, seminars or keynotes or preaching, whatever it is, happens to be, but things that I will help you to, one, unpack, some of the concepts and principles around prophetic spontaneous worship, and help build your confidence to not be afraid and be able to do it with confidence. I do believe that through a term called success modeling, that we can help growing worshipers reduce the time that it takes to confidently flow in spontaneous prophetic worship. I mean, really, this is kind of selfish in that I want to do this for the younger version of me. I'm just thinking of really the younger version of me who may be, in their late teens, early 20s, who's just starting. And I remember when I was starting that, there wasn't, a lot of people doing, there maybe were people doing prophetic music, but not really spontaneous prophetic music. And so, one, trying to find books or, when I was a young person learning music, VHS or DVDs, instructional videos on music or a music instruction, whatever it was. I mean, that was the way that I learned. And I'm just thinking of me as a 20-year-old, a younger 20-year-old, and thinking, what would be some things that I could, share my wins and share my fails, share the things that worked, share the things that don't work, because I want you to be able to grow. I want you to be able to specifically grow in confidence and know that you can do this. So who am I? Well, as of this video, I'm a 41-year-old husband and father of 4. I have a boy, a girl, another boy. I've been, a musician and a singer, my whole life, and specifically a singer. My parents said that I was actually singing songs before I could do full sentences, before I could speak full sentences. And I shared this before to other people, but not here, is that, the first song I used to sing was, everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know who Jesus is. And so I would sing that song to every stranger, to every single person that I would meet. I would sing, everybody ought to know. I did my first big production when I was 5 years old. I was in a musical called The Super Gang in the 80s. And it was pretty awesome and got a taste for, music and performance and all that. And for a while, though, it kind of lay dormant until I was in my teenage years. And in my mid to late teenage years, I decided I was really gonna, get into bands and get into singing. I really fell in love with drums. I played piano for a few years and never stuck with it. And so if I have to encourage anybody out there that you're struggling with piano or you're struggling with keyboard and you're just feeling frustrated, I'm telling you, when I was 13 years old, if I could go back and tell 13-year-old me, stay with piano. You will regret it if you don't. And so that's been the one thing I've kind of regretted my whole musical journey is, man, I wish I would have stuck with the piano, because the piano is just great in terms of theory, being able to see it, being able to understand how harmonies work and melodies work. And even in today's day and age with MIDI, just if you know how to play the piano, there's so many sounds and so many things that you can do now. You can play like almost any instrument. And I think that really piano is the foundational instrument to be able to actually start with music. So I wanted to play drums. I really loved drums. I loved to play the drum set. And I didn't end up playing drums till I was like 21. Yeah, and I had an encounter with the Lord. I had done music and things and was really, it was okay. Grew up in church, was like, whatever. Had an amazing encounter with the Lord when I was 21. And fell in love with worship music specifically. I was at the time a professional musician, and I toured and did all kinds of music stuff, played lots of different things, got paid to play music. And around that same year, which was in 1990, well, not when I was 21, so I guess it was, around that. So in 1999, so I'd have been 21, in September of 1999, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City went 24/7, and I remember visiting it. And yes, I say this, that it was what Mike Bickle says, it was little, it was rough, and it was ugly, but I just experienced, I was just like, wow, this is such a glorious thing, and this is totally worth it. And this is honestly what I want to do the rest of my life. So I started leading worship, and just as an encouragement to you, when I started leading worship, I didn't play the guitar. I didn't play the guitar at all. I was just, a singer who would tell people, yeah, keep going, or I would say, hey, let's go to the bridge, or I would do vocal cues, which is another good thing, but I wasn't an instrumentalist. So I would also say, if you're going to lead, get good at leading vocally, but also get good at leading from your instrument, understand your instrument. So I started leading worship, and I heard people doing spontaneous prophetic worship, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I want to do that. Because I remember I couldn't quite pinpoint it. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was and what I thought it was. But I remember thinking, wow, I really want to do this. I feel it. It was an intuitive thing. It wasn't a cognitive thing. It was an intuitive thing. And I remember thinking, wow, I really want to do this. So I remember that it was during Feast of Tabernacles that we would do this thing every year at the church that I was a part of, that we would do an outdoor kind of prayer meeting and outdoor praise and all of that. And I remember trying to lead, and I think I have this on another video on my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, where I talk about how I played a D chord for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I wasn't very skilled. I wasn't very good, but my flesh was very willing. My spirit was very willing, but my flesh was very weak. I guess my flesh was willing as well, that I wanted to do it, but I wasn't able to articulate what I was actually wanting to do. And so I got my guitar out, played a D chord for like 2 hours, and it was so painful. Oh my gosh. It was so painful just trying to make something sort of happen. And I thought that if I kept doing it that same exact way, that something better would happen just in doing it over and over again. And that wasn't quite the case. I just need to get a little drink. And so yeah, around that time, so I did that, and that was a fail. So the first thing I learned very quickly was, one, I don't know what I'm doing, and two, I don't know how to lead other people in what I don't know what I'm doing. And so really quickly I was like, okay. So I started studying music, but I also started studying like worship books, and I got my hands on everything that I could about worship. And specifically, I tried to get things on spontaneous worship. And so I started picking up even a lot of, at the time, CDs and cassettes and even records that I could find that were related to spontaneous prophetic music. And I started just grabbing it, and almost like reverse engineering, like, okay, what did they just do there? Okay, what did they do there? And I started writing things down because I wanted to learn, because there really wasn't people giving lessons. There really wasn't people giving instruction in that way. And so I remember paying money when the House of Prayer started to put, they had a security camera that was like, I've posted a picture of this on my Instagram account, at Modern Psalmist is my Instagram account. And I have a picture of me, pacing in the prayer room. And there was this little security camera, and the security camera would let you, the sound wasn't very good, the picture quality wasn't very good, but I just remember watching the web stream, watching people do things and go, okay, what are they doing there? What are they doing there? And writing things down and just learning through watching. I'm talking about success modeling. They weren't telling me what they were doing. I was just watching it and learning that way. And so around a little bit after that, the House of Prayer in St. Louis started. It was, at the time, it was called the International House of Prayer, STL. IHOP STL is what it's called. And I started leading at the House of Prayer. And in all honesty, the only reason that I picked up the guitar was so I could lead Devo sets. It was the only reason I started playing the guitar, is so I could actually lead the House of Prayer, because I saw that the House of Prayer model specifically was very difficult to lead without an instrument, at least at the time. And so for a few years, I was leading many sets a day at the House of Prayer in St. Louis. And then in 2005, I moved to KC. I moved to Kansas City and joined the Intro to IHOP internship. And I did that, and man, I sat in the room at the prayer room. If you've never been there before, you need to go. It goes, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City goes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's 365 days a year, and they've been going in September now. They'll have been going 24 hours a day for 20 years. And I was lucky enough that I got to have an integral part and be a part of that ministry for 10 years, that I got to sow there and learn there and be there and serve there. And I'm so grateful for the time that, and honestly, it's great because, many of the guests that I'm going to have on this show were people that I actually served with. And these are people whose opinions I respect very much. We might have differing opinions, which is fine. I love the fact that there's these different opinions, and I think that we are going to find, some truth in the middle of all the different opinions, and that for each person it's a little different. So when I got to the prayer room, I sat there for probably, I would be in the chairs, just sitting in the prayer room for, 12 hours at a time. I'd just get my Bible out. I would, I'd meditate on the Word. And if you don't know what that is, I actually have a free, guide. It's really short, 9-page PDF that's called Grow in Spontaneous Worship in just 30 minutes a day. And it's almost specifically geared around the singing, the reading, the studying, and specifically the meditating on the Word. And that actually, I have that as a free gift for you if you want it. And in the show notes, you'll find it below. Just hit that link, and you will be able to get it for absolutely free. And I can't imagine that you won't find pretty significant results after just doing it. Even, like I said, 30 minutes a day. Just putting into practice the things that I already know they work. These are principles, they work. So I remember that I would sit in the room for hours, and I would just sing the Bible, and I would just meditate on the Bible. I would pray the Bible. And I was actually on worship teams, and I was leading, and for many of the years that I was there, I was doing sets of spontaneous prophetic music for 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. So imagine that, 2 to 4 hours on a stage playing and practicing like prophetic spontaneous worship. So you learn a lot of things when you play that much every single day. There are things that that you fall into, good and bad. I tried lots of things. I found lots of things that worked, and I found lots of things that didn't work. There was a lot, and I can't stress this enough, there was a lot of trial and error. And when I say trial and error, I mostly mean error. I messed up so much. I can almost guarantee you that I have messed up and screwed up more than most of you have even tried to do something. And so during my time in Kansas City, I also developed a worship camp for children, from 8 to 12. And so I put a lot of these things into practice. And in 2015, I moved back to St. Louis, and now I help lead worship, and I'm like a worship leader and a worship director, worship pastor, however you want to say it, at a church called Southgate in Crestwood, which is a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And I help lead around 6 worship teams at that church, where I kind of give direction to them and pastoral care to them. But I also help lead a prayer room that I helped start called the Gateway House of Prayer here in St. Louis as well, where we have prayer and worship day and night. last year, so in 2018, is when I decided to start Modern Psalmist. But the truth is this actually started 10 years ago. And it started 10 years ago when I was sitting in the prayer room asking the Lord for divine ideas specifically on how to help. I remember asking this, how can I give value to the worship and prayer movement in the earth? Because my real goal, my real heart was like, now it's, I say this on my bio page is I want to equip and enable 1 million global indigenous worshipers. I want people from all over. I have this heart for Isaiah 24 specifically, where it says, from the ends of the earth I hear song, glory to the righteous one. That I want to be that person. I want to be a part of a company of people that teaches the world to sing glory to the righteous one in their words, in their tongue. And where every tribe, every tongue, every nation, every people are worshiping before we know that it's going to happen. So I want to help bring value, help bring teaching, help bring leadership, and a little bit that I can to help those grow so that they can sing the song of the Lord that I know is going to happen. It's inevitable. So I want to help it happen. And so I started developing ideas of, well, how can I help the worship movement? And I started to realize what were the questions that I would get asked a lot. Even 10 years ago, what were the things that people valued in me? What were the things that I was always, what were the things that I was passionate about, but what was also the things that I really could bring? And I remember, the technology at the time was DVDs, like I said before, VHS sets, VHS tapes, and DVD sets. And I remember thinking, I'll make a VHS set about, leading prophetic worship. And I just started having more and more and more ideas. I actually started writing it all out. And for one reason or another, I had many doors closed in my face. For one reason or another, I felt very rejected, very dejected, and it got shut down. And I had multiple people during the last 10 years basically say, hey, Nathan, I remember you had that thing that you were talking about, which wasn't called Modern Psalmist at the time. It was called, wait for it, it was called Applied Prophetic Worship Theory, APWT. It was a terrible name. It was the working name because basically I wanted it to be the 4 things that I really wanted to be able to express. I wanted to be applied, and that I wanted everything that I do to be actionable. I want everything that I give you to be something you can use today. It's not just theoretical, and our meaning is not just ethereal, and it's not just something that you can't use, but you can use it right now. The second thing is I specifically wanted to be about prophetic and spontaneous music, not just about, hey, putting a good set list together and this, that, and the other. I also wanted it to be about worship, not just spontaneous, music, whatever. I want it to be specifically music that is to edify and encourage and exhort, the body of Christ, and to lift up the name of Jesus, to agree with Jesus. And I also wanted it to be theory because I wanted it to actually be information and studying and knowledge, and not just, I want it to be stuff that, and theory also because it's not just rules. It's not just, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, have to do it this way. But the idea of theory is that you can kind of bend it and break it and make it suit your needs a bit, and that there's some flexibility with theory that maybe is different with law. It's not, applied prophetic worship law, it's applied prophetic worship theory. And so I really wanted to bring that to the forefront, but I felt like the Lord gave me the term Modern Psalmist, and I'll be just totally honest here. The reason is because I used to read I still do, but I used to read a magazine called Modern Drummer because I love the drums, and drums are still like my favorite instrument. And so it's called Modern Drummer. And I think Jim Chapin was the one who wrote the book called, Techniques for the Modern Drummer. And I was like, ooh, modern, because it's for the now. And I think the prophetic and the spontaneous is always about the now. So modern was a good thing. And then I remember, psalmist is Doy in that, they're the songwriters before the Lord. But I also remember Kent Henry, who's going to be a guest here. He also had a series of cassettes and CDs called the Psalmist series, and he also used to have a magazine called the Psalmist magazine. So I basically stole these two ideas and compounded them together and said, I want to have the modern psalmist, modern psalmist. And so that was the reason that I even came up with it. And so I kind of just dipped my feet, my toes. Honestly, I posted a little graphic, this dorky, stupid little graphic on Instagram. I just posted it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put my feet in and see what happens. And I just had to take a plunge, at least put it out there that modern psalmist is coming. So it's been almost a year now, and I have a bunch of stuff that I'm doing. I have a ton of people that I've already talked to, and I have even more that I'm planning on talking to. But the things that I want to have in this podcast are, one, I want to tell stories. I don't want it just to be interviews, but I want it to be stories. Specifically, the wins, what things worked, the fails, what things didn't work. I want to give you tips. I want actionable techniques. I want simple concepts, and I want down-to-earth explanations of those things. Like I said before, I have a free gift that I want to give you. It's a short guide, a short PDF guide that's about 9 pages long, absolutely free, called Grow in Spontaneous Worship in Just 30 Minutes a Day. And there is a link in the show notes. And if you enjoy this show, please give it, so far, give it a 5-star review on whatever channel you're listening to it. Tell a friend who you think really needs to, who want to grow in spontaneous prophetic worship, and share it on social media. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, think about giving it a review or 5 stars, a like, or a share. For more information, visit modernpsalmist.com.